Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us for this webinar today. I want to start with going back to maybe making a statement to set the tone, a counter statement that testing is dead. So I've been using Agile for long enough, or I've been involved in the Agile community long enough that I remember when the first book, this is actually the second edition of the Extreme Programming book by Kent Beck, but the first edition came out in 2000, I think, or 2001 at the latest. XP, Extreme Programming, was all the rage in the late 90s and in early 2000s, right before the Agile Manifesto came out. And the idea at the time was, and I don't think Kent Beck said it this way, he wasn't trying to put people out of a job, so he didn't have malicious intent, but there were statements running around at the time that testing is dead, software testing is dead, in the guise of software testers. There's no longer a need for software testers. That developers will test their own code. And some reacted to that at the time. I remember back at that time where there was this youthful enthusiasm around XP, and folks looked at it as a silver bullet. And there were testers that actually lost their job in organizations because of an adoption of extreme programming. And there was that enthusiasm of, oh, now we have, if we transition to Agile, if we transition to extreme programming, then we don't need testers. And it wasn't just testers at the time. It was project managers was another, role or another term, and even managers were bantied about. So, we don't need any stinking managers or any stinking project managers or any stinking testers. And there was a wave of development-centric testing, and there was this view that testing is dead. And I'm just recalling that wave. Now, it's reverted over the years, and I think sort of common sense willed out. But I wanted to remind everyone of setting that context for this talk. Even though there was a reversion of that, there was another phase to the testing is dead. And anyone who's a tester on the line, please bear with me. So I'm going to be talking about the demise. You may be hanging your head. A tear may come to your eye. But hold on. There might be a light at the end of the tunnel. So hold on a little bit. In 2011, it seemed like the stars crossed in a weird way in the universe, because at three separate conferences, three separate pundits or leaders in the testing space, in the software testing space, had what I would call as testing is dead keynotes or presentation. Goranka did that, James Whitaker did that, and Alberto did that, Savoya did that. At Google, Star West, and Stans is in New Zealand. Star West, I was attending it, so I wasn't at the other two. I just heard of them, and I saw the videos, and I read the accounts. But I actually happened to be in Star West, and that's a conference, and it was in California, in Anaheim, and I attended Whitaker's keynote. And the real title was "All That Testing is Getting in the Way of Quality." But in the aftermath of the talk, it was everyone likened it to the testing is dead keynote, and Whitaker sort of went into what's changing from the point of view that the software testing as a profession is entering some profound changes, and I think it's an extension of that youthful enthusiasm from the XP, the original Extreme Programming days. So he talked about developers are doing the testing, customers are doing the testing for us. So I think at the time he was working for Google. James, he's oscillated between Google and Microsoft. I think he's at Microsoft currently, but he sort of job hopped during that time. And I believe at that time he was at Google. So there was this prevalence of, we'll deploy frequently and the customers will do the testing for us. So the customers are our beta, and when I say customers, it's all Google customers. The other thing he was emphasizing in his talk is automation is eliminating the need for testing. So we're automating things, which is a programmatic chore, not a testing-centric chore. And he made the case that the value stream or the value proposition, the meta value proposition, where, what we need to be keeping our eye on the ball. What is the one ball? Was the code. And it's not the test cases, and it's the code. And he talked about the software developer, engineer, and test model. So the Microsoft SDAT model was indications of that. Developers in test being scripters. Even in the early this was in the early days of DevOps becoming popularized, and he was likening it to the operations sort of side of the house where there was a lot of automation and a lot of scripting. And again, just keep it in the back of your mind that, I'm not trying to demoralize anyone, but just setting the stage. He shared in his keynote, the Testing is Dead keynote, what he characterized as 4 unpleasant facts, that only the software, the product matters. And again, I'm sort of restating this to take us on another journey. But I'm not poo-pooing these. I'm not undermining these. I'm not disagreeing with these. James is a really bright, capable, sort of articulate consultant, and he has a wonderful point of view. And he's incredibly well respected. So these points need to be considered. So he talked about it's about the product, stupid, right? It's about software, but not just software. It's about the product, sort of the external, embodiment of the software. The value of testing is in the activity, is the second thing he talked about, not the artifacts. So the activity of testing is what matters, not the bugs reported, or the test cases that we write necessarily. The value, you can have the artifacts, but you don't sell another way to look at that is you don't sell the artifact. He made the case that the only important, and again, this correlates to one, the only important artifact is the code. It's about the code, and not about writing other things down. In fact, the code is an artifact. And he also made this leads into the case where testers need to be able to write code or read, at least minimally read code in this case. And then bugs don't count unless they get fixed. And what he was really saying, I think, at the time was, the density doesn't matter, or, the fact that if you're a tester and you walked in today and you discovered and documented 5 bugs, that those 5 bugs don't really count from a valuation perspective. They count if they get fixed. So if you become a champion for those bugs, then that's the distinction. That would be a differentiation. But they're pleasant and unpleasant facts. Maybe another way to say it is they're realistic facts. So ironically enough, in 2011 at the same conference, and I wanted to show you a video, but I don't think the tooling, the WebEx really supports it, or we couldn't figure it out quickly enough. So this link goes to a YouTube video. Please don't click on it during the talk. Please just listen to the talk. But after, if you like this webinar, I'd encourage you. It's a 5-minute-ish snippet. And I did what's called a lightning keynote at Star West. So the same conference, the day after James Whitaker's talk, I was one of a bunch of mini keynoters. What they do is they do lightning keynotes. So, a group of speakers get the chance to have 5 minutes on stage to talk about a little mini keynote topic. And I did that here, and it's videotaped. If you click on that link, you'll get right to the point where I'm introduced, and just listen to it for 5 minutes. I'm going to the best of my ability, I'm going to recount what I said then right now. And what I talked about in that, I was resonating with James's talk, so it was fresh in my mind.